guest on today's episode, filling in for Mr. Matt Williamson. We've got the Mike Renner, so we have to talk a little NFL draft, but what was that on Monday Night Football? Bengals, Jaguars, and AFC, NFC power rankings. Who would you least want to face right now in the NFL after 13 weeks? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson Show, the Peacock and Renner Show for one day only here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen, and shout out to all the everydayers out there subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, then use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And just as we all expected, Mike, the unbelievable matchup of Jake Browning versus CJ Beathard on Monday Night Football, when we were all getting ready for this great Monday Nighter with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it was Jake Browning's Bengals that pulled it off in overtime, 34-31. Probably the least exciting, ugliest football game for a Monday Night Football game that was decided by a field goal. But here we are in week 13 of the 2023 NFL season, Mike.
Yeah, what a game with Jake Browning. What was that? I mean, it was fun to see because
all he does is win.
The Bengals, like, they never ran that offense with Joe Burrow, right? Like, they did screens, play action. They did so many stuff that they never ran this season with Joe Burrow, and Browning looked good. I mean, he was obviously, beneficiary of a lot of yards after the catch and whatnot, but like that was a real deal performance. That was a strong showing from him. I did not expect that. I don't think anyone expected that whatsoever.
Dude, 115.5 rating. He was one of PFF's top 3 graded quarterbacks in week 13, 32 of 37 passing, 354 yards. He had the touchdown, the long one, catch and run to Jamar Chase, put it out there for him. Jamar Chase obviously was the guy on offense for the Cincinnati Bengals, caught 11 passes for 149 and the touchdown. And we got to talk about Trevor Lawrence and the unfortunate situation there with his ankle injury. But with Jake Browning, is he for real enough, Mike, that the Bengals could still be in this thing? Because you start looking at the playoff situation in the AFC, there's a lot up for grabs, and the Bengals aren't in a worse spot at 6-6 than the Buffalo Bills are right now.
Yeah, they still have a tough go into the barn here, though. I'm not buying necessarily, but I mean, they held strong against the Steelers a week prior. Now the Jaguars, like that was a real win. So I still think they're on the outside looking in, but to me, the more important thing here, like you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence, the injury, but also like they had a chance to grab the number 1 seed here, really put themselves in the conversation. But it's just that they never felt like they were the 1 seed, right? Like this team never felt like it was the best team in the AFC, let alone NFL. It always kind of felt like they're on the outside looking in. And again, when the stakes are their highest, they seemingly come up short here.
And yeah, and that's a huge difference between 1 seed in the AFC right now, and then you lose that game. Now you're 4 seed. So that's how tight things are at the top of the AFC. And that's why I'm so fascinated by our next topic here of which teams you least want to face, sort of power ranking the AFC. And we'll take a peek at the NFC as well. But we're talking a little bit more AFC here to start this episode. And Trevor, I think the Bengals showed us here in this game. I would rather be the Cincinnati Bengals than the Jaguars without Trevor Lawrence. I think the Jaguars could be in trouble. We don't have any specifics quite yet on the Trevor Lawrence injury. If this is long-term, you go from possibly 1 seed to possibly working your way out of a tough division. And it would be tough for them. They're 2 games away from everybody in the AFC, basically. So if you stumble here, if you're the Jaguars, you could go potentially trying to get the 1 seed in week 13 to not even making the playoffs, because you got the Colts and the Texans both just 1 game behind you in your own division, let alone everybody else fighting for those wild card spots. We mentioned the Bengals and the Buffalo Bills at 6-6. All those teams have an opportunity to be in this thing. And if Trevor Lawrence is out, and by the way, all the memes right now going around the internet of Trevor Lawrence still walking through the tunnel trying to get his way to, what was that? No cart for your franchise quarterback in the longest tunnel in NFL history? What is going on there in Jacksonville?
Well, it looked like he thought he could walk, right? Because right after the injury, like he tried to get off the field. He tried to go. And so I think he was more saying like he didn't want the cart, but that is also moving at a snail's pace up that tunnel. Definitely some optics issues there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you're right. If they don't have him these next 2 weeks, Browns next week going to them, and then the Ravens at home the week after that, they don't win those 2 games, right? You're not winning those with CJ Beathard. I just flat out would be wildly surprised if they did. So that puts you basically out of the running for 1 seed, 2 seed. Even if you win your division at that point, I think you're going to be the 4 seed. Then also with the Colts and the Texans nipping on their tails, that means you're probably getting relegated to a wild card at that point. Even if your final 3 games are the Bucs, Panthers, Titans, which are all winnable, I think dropping 2 down the stretch could very well put you behind one of those other teams in the AFC South.
Looking at that tiebreaker of conference record as well, I know there's head-to-heads with the guys in the division, but they do have that right now on a few teams: the Browns, the Colts, the Texans. So that will help as far as tiebreakers. And I'd still be surprised if the Jaguars don't make the playoffs, but you're not going to win in January if Trevor Lawrence isn't there. So you got to get him back ASAP to even salvage the 4 seed in the division, and you sure as heck got to get Trevor Lawrence back in time for the playoffs if you want to win any of those playoff games. So that's a tough blow for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, which brings me to the next question, Mike, is which one of these teams do you least want to face in the AFC? Like this becomes like sort of a college bowl question. I you're deep into college football. I hate college football myself. It's minor league football. The politics and my mind's blown. Like FSU can't be perfect in a Power 5 conference and earn a shot to win a title. Quarterback be damned. If you were the bowl committee right now, how would you rank these teams, right, for the NFL playoffs? Because there's certain teams there's a lot of records that are tight. There's some teams I would much rather not face than others. So if you're doing this for the AFC, how do you view these from the lens of which teams you'd least want to face?
To me, there's a clear one, and then you can have a debate after that. But I think the Ravens have to be number 1 on that list just because of how suffocating that defense is and the fact that you have to face Lamar Jackson. So there's like 2 headaches you really have to deal with. One is, one of the most talented and diverse defenses you'll see in the NFL. And for my money, it's the best defense in the NFL. They've locked down, numerous talented offenses over the course of this season. And then on the other side of the ball, it's just like, when you have Lamar Jackson with now the weapons that they have and the dynamic guys and guys like Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, that's just a lot to prepare for. Now, I get that they don't have Mark Andrews. That's a big blow to this team with how much he brought to the table. But Lamar Jackson and what he brings to the table in the running game is still always going to be a problem week in and week out. And I know he's had struggles in the playoffs, but I still just think this team is so complete that it's going to take your A game to beat them any given week. And that's why I think they're the clear number 1 in the AFC right now.
Yeah, it's Baltimore Ravens for me too. And you laid it out perfectly there. That defense you don't want to go against, and Lamar Jackson you never want to go against. And there's going to be a good one coming up on Christmas where the team on the NFC for me is the 49ers. So we got Ravens 49ers coming up, and the Ravens against NFC teams. Talk about not wanting to play a team. The Ravens don't lose to NFC teams. They're like, 16, 17, 18-1 or something like that against NFC teams when Lamar Jackson's playing, because he's so hard to play against for teams that haven't seen him, let alone teams that are prepared for him and see him twice a year. So that's a team I don't really want to face in the AFC. And clearly to me, and they, tiebreakers, they're the 2 seed right now, but they're number 1 in my heart of teams that I would not want to face right now in the AFC. We're look more into these AFC teams, more in these NFC teams. And of course, with Mike Renner, we've got to talk a little bit of 2024 NFL draft as well, coming up here on Peacock and Williamson. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. A little special offer for our listeners. Locked On NFL is the code for $20 off your first purchase. And when you're buying those tickets to the next big event, whether it's an NFL football game or big time concert, comedy show, theater events, whatever event that is near you, you shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets. It shouldn't be a hassle to buy tickets. You should be excited for your next event. That's where Gametime comes in. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of those events. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You get to see what it looks like, the view from your seats before you buy. You know exactly what you get. You know you're getting a great deal because all-in prices show your total upfront and none of those stinking hidden fees that drives me crazy when I'm buying tickets to my sporting events or the concerts that I'm trying to go to. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Mike. So we've got the Baltimore Ravens 1 in our least want to play against power rankings here after 13 weeks of the NFL season. Who's number 2 for you? Right now, via tiebreakers, it would be the Miami Dolphins with the 1 seed if the season ended today, which we know it does not. And the Dolphins still have this amazing season where they haven't beaten anybody, but then they're also destroying people. So they're kind of scary. Their strength of schedule's 0.393, right? They have the easiest strength of schedule you've seen. Like, I don't even know what to think about this Miami Dolphins football team, especially if you put them in a cold weather road atmosphere in January.
I still have to put them number 2, though. I do, because of just, again, how do you stop Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? Some people have this year. You know, it's not obviously impossible. It can be done. But all it takes is one mistake, right? When you're playing guys like that, 2 mistakes, and all of a sudden the game gets completely different. And you see that obviously why they beat up on a lot of these defenses that make a lot of mistakes, right? They beat up on the poorly coached, the poorly talented defenses because, you know, they exploit any mismatch they can whatsoever. So you really have to play a perfect game when you face this Miami Dolphins offense to try to slow them down. So that's why, I mean, just look around the rest of the AFC though right now. There's no one else you can say that about, right? None of these other offenses are anywhere close to that. Probably the best one outside of that is a 6-6 team in the Buffalo Bills, right? And they've obviously have their issues as well. So I'm not putting them number 2. So when it gets to, January, I get that if they do have to travel outside of Miami, that it could get ugly with Tua's arm if it does have bad weather, if it is cold. But still, this running game is diverse enough that they could probably win a grinded out sort of game on the ground as well.
Tyreek Hill, your MVP right now?
See, I hate the value aspect of MVP. I think once that's the case, you've basically designated it as a quarterback award, right? Yeah. Just calling it a value award because that's the most valuable position when you relate it to what you could get, over replacement level player, which is like the usual concept of value. Mm-hmm. But Tyreek Hill versus every other wide receiver in the NFL, he's doing things we just never seen. And it's not even close. What he's doing right now in terms of a per play efficiency metrics is out of this world. So if you were to ever give it to a non-quarterback, like he's as deserving, if not more so than Adrian Peterson, right? The last non-quarterback to win it. He's having that ridiculous of a season for the Miami Dolphins that if you were to ever give it to someone, he would be deserving.
Yeah, but again, I agree. It's not the best player award. It's not the most fun player award. It's the most valuable player award. And I've gone over this with 49ers fans on Locked On 49ers. It's, I would much rather 100 times out of 100 play a game without Christian McCaffrey than play a game without Brock Purdy. In fact, we've seen that with the Eagles 49ers twice now, once without Purdy, once with Purdy. It's about a 6 touchdown delta in total points there at the end of those 2 football games. So, by the way, the right answer is Brock Purdy for MVP. So moving on to who's next for you in the AFC, the teams you'd least want to play after the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins.
I think it still has to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Now they obviously look imminently beatable this year, more so than any year since Mahomes became a starter, I believe. But Mahomes is still your starter. And for as rough as that offense has looked, Andy Reid and Mahomes in the playoffs is always something they can always turn it on at any given minute, right? Like that duo shows up again and again. We've seen it. And they also have now the best defense, I think, that the Kansas City Chiefs have ever had under Patrick Mahomes. So it's an odd year in that the one year their offense looks pedestrian in a number of ways is the first year they have like a top 3 to 5 defense in the NFL. So that can still win you games, especially again, when you have Andy Reid and the Mahomes on the other side. And at some point, right, some of these receivers have to figure it out. At some point, they have to build rapport. Like we were talking about them and the Packers. So, this past week, Packers obviously beat them in kind of the same boat of they're trying to get these young receivers up to speed, get them involved in the offense. Packers have finally clicked. The Chiefs, will it click? It hasn't yet, but at some point you would bet on it starting to work with just one, how much talent they have in the fold there, and two, just track record of that coaching staff and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, at some point they got to figure it out, and I almost feel like they're giving everybody too much of an opportunity. I want to see him pick like Rashee Rice and Sky Moore, whoever. Like pick 3 guys and don't filter in everybody, because that's not working either. So pick some guys and go. We've seen 13 weeks of football at Jacksonville or for the Kansas City Chiefs. Figure it out. Pick 3 receivers and utilize them. And Valdez-Scantling does no good for you if you get open deep, if you can't track the ball and can't catch the ball. So he needs to sit, to me, and let the young guys try to figure it out. And it's paying off for the Packers where it's not paying off right now for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that take. Just like at some point the cream has to rise. Like you have to give some guys a chance to develop that rapport with Mahomes. But when you're playing, 60% of the snaps every single game, he just has no one that he feels like he can throw to consistently outside of Travis Kelce.
All right. This is, by the way, turned into a little episode of Renner Ranks here. Renner Ranks, one of the newest shows, the hugest off-season acquisition in Locked On Podcast Network history, potentially. Every single day, Mike Renner ranking everything from NFL to college football, NFL draft prospects. And it's a show you guys got to check out every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Renner Ranks, featuring one Mike Renner. So just real quick here with the rest of the AFC, we're not going all the way down here, but who are the next teams you would least like to face right now, whether they are a team that's going to be in the playoff hunt or not?
Yeah, I think rounding out the top 5, I would have to say Buffalo Bills. Even if they don't have, the next best record, you still have Josh Allen with what I think is probably the best, bevy of weapons he's had over the course of his Bills career. Like they can still at any given moment, they are, like I said, behind the Dolphins, the second most dangerous offense in the AFC right now.
They're such a strange team. The best the best the Bills can be this year is maybe the best team in the AFC.
Yes.
You just don't see that every week.
And, they've lost a lot of close games. Their point differential is still over 100. They're still plus 100, despite being 6-6, which has to be one of the best point differentials all time for a team at that record. So I'd still not want to face them. They are honestly in the conversation with the Chiefs right now with basically how both those teams have performed through this span. If you want to say you were more scared of playing the Bills than the Chiefs, I wouldn't argue that too hard. It's all there. It just hasn't quite all been put together for a stretch to where you can say that this team is the Bills that everyone thought they were going to be going into the season. So they definitely deserve to be 4, though. And honestly, I don't even know if I put the Jags at 5 with Trevor Lawrence and that injury. And now if say he comes back, sure. But like the Texans with CJ Stroud right now, and I get that Tank Dell got hurt and that's a big blow to that offense, but that offense is humming. There's a reason why, I think the Shanahan tree has the 3 highest yards per attempts in the NFL. And it's because that offense works. And I think Bobby Slowick, what he's running in Houston, is probably the closest, 1-to-1 from what Kyle Shanahan runs in San Francisco. We see all these coordinators, breaking off from his tree or whatever and kind of putting their own spin on it, whether it's Mike McDaniel in Miami, whether it's Sean McVay in LA. Their offenses look different. A lot of core principles are the same, but look different. I think Bobby's looks a lot like what they run in San Francisco. They do a lot of the same stuff. And, oh, by the way, they have one of the most talented, physically gifted, mentally talented quarterbacks running that show now. Maybe the most talented quarterback to ever run a Shanahan offense. So that's going to be dangerous no matter who they're playing.
And Bobby Slowick has those ties all the way back to that Washington group, and he never really gets talked about. Like he was, I don't know what his job necessarily was at that point. He might have been more about getting coffee than anything else. But they were called.
He's an outside linebackers coach back then.
Yeah.
Defensive assistant. Yeah.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he was
Brian Arakpo and Ryan Kerrigan.
You got, hey, that's what makes Kyle Shanahan so great. He uses the defensive rules against you as much as anything. So you got to know the defensive side of the ball if you're going to be a great offense coordinator. And I just hope that he doesn't go get a head coach job so soon that he's taken away from DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud that quickly. Got to get a couple of years in there, hopefully. Yeah. But you know how teams are in the NFL. The next hot guy, boom, it happens quick. So maybe Bobby Slowick is that guy already in this next hiring cycle. Looking at the NFC, it's clearly the San Francisco 49ers number one. I'm not going to let Mike rank anything different, but next I want to hear the rest of his NFC least you want to face teams, and then we got to talk a little NFL draft as well with Mike Renner of Renner Ranks next. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical and the Jace Case. I know we come here to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities in life, but can we talk for a minute about preparing for real life? And according to the FDA, pharmacies are running a little low on antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of flu season. So if you have specific needs for your family and have worries about supply chain issues, or maybe you're traveling and you aren't going to have cell service, you're going to be somewhere where you need to know that you have the medication specifically for your family that you and your family might need, the Jace Case is here for those situations. The Jace Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinus issues, skin infections, among others. And, emergencies can happen at any time, whether they are natural disasters, whatever it could be. And Jace Medical has you covered. So visit jacemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be delivered and dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use our offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, that's a Jace Case, $20 off your order. Promo code LOCKEDON. Go to Jace Medical, JASE medical.com. All right. Okay. Maybe it's not the 49ers for you, Mike. Who you got in the NFC? Which team do you not want to face right now?
It is the 49ers, and for obvious reasons. It's that the same thing about that I kind of said about the Ravens and the AFC. It's just that they can absolutely pour it on you at any given moment. They can suffocate you. They've have absolute dominant blowout wins against the best teams in the NFL. That doesn't happen unless you got the goods. And they're just so hard to stop offensively because of, one, how well Brock Purdy's playing, but two, just like every single guy on that offense on any given play. And you're even seeing like Juwan Jennings is a playmaker. Every single guy is someone that if you don't account for, if you kind of just get a little lazy, if you let them get matched up one-on-one with a linebacker, and we saw that again and again in the Philly game, they're toast. You're done. They're gonna create a big play out of that. So offense, and then obviously on the other side of the ball, adding Chase Young was, to me, a super underrated move because he's still darn good. I mean, the fact that Washington wanted to get rid of him didn't have as much to do with Young as it did the Washington organization as a whole. And then obviously Nick Bosa's like, reigning decoy. Hasn't missed a beat this year. He's one of him, Parsons, and Myles Garrett are probably 3 guys right now in the NFL that if you just leave them on one-on-one, and you even saw it against Lane Johnson, you leave them one-on-one, they're winning every single time. So that's always going to just be impossible to account for, or just very difficult to account for. And obviously why you have one of the best defenses in the NFL. So yeah, 49ers to me, the clear one, even if I still worry about that offensive line, should they ever have to play catch up in a game.
Yeah. And you worry about the offensive line, then they go up against a defensive line like Philadelphia's and still put up 42 points on them with 0 points in the first quarter. So how quickly that can happen to a team. And yeah, I'm not shocked after seeing that game that Shaq Leonard was signed within 24 hours for the Philadelphia Eagles defense. And the next 2 teams for a lot of people are the Eagles and the Cowboys, and the 49ers put 42 points up on both of them. Do the Detroit Lions factor in for you here at number 2? Who you got?
To me, number 2, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And because of, one, how well they've been playing, but 2, like, I think the worst kept secret, or one of the least talked about things, is that this Eagles defense has been really susceptible this season. And especially because of what they now have at linebacker and over the middle of the field. And the fact that those cornerbacks are both over 30, they are not maybe, what we think of when we think of Darius Slay and James Bradbury. They're just not quite that dominant that they were a year ago. And when you've taken a step back in a number of positions, they're bottom 5 in the NFL in points per drive allowed this season. So that's defense that's susceptible. Now they're still amazing along the line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line, but the Cowboys are right there, if not better, along the defensive line right now. This Cowboys D-line is an absolute house. I mean, I just said, Nick Bosa's one of the 3. I mentioned Micah Parsons, one of those other 3 that you leave him against a less athletic tackle or even an athletic tackle like you saw in Charles Cross last week, and he just feasts in obvious passing situations. It's impossible to even touch that guy at times with how athletic he is. So I do think the Cowboys are just scarier right now in what they have on the defensive side of the ball. Now with, Jerron Bland being a big play machine on the back end across from Stephon Gilmore, who's still fairly solid himself, like, you're just going to have to play a really good game to beat this Dallas Cowboys team right now. And you better have it in the trenches because you're not going to touch Dak if not. If you don't have a real pass rush, this offensive line that the Dallas Cowboys have right now is keeping them some massive pockets to throw out of.
I'm fascinated to hear who you have at number 5. And I think I know who the teams at 3 and 4 are for you. So how do you rank the rest of these least want to play against teams in the NFC right now?
Yeah, then it has to be the Eagles at 3. Number 4, you just got to go.
You might surprise me at 4 then.
You almost have to go the Detroit Lions, but I want to say the Green Bay Packers is the last of this 5 because of, look what they're doing right now on the offensive side of the ball. You have the quarterback who's playing the best after Dak Purdy in the NFC right now. Jordan Love, his last 5 games have been the best 5 games of his career. And you just saw him beat a Detroit Lions team and a Chiefs team that are, poised to be division winners here, right? So you've just seen them beat 2 teams that come playoff time, they very well could face. One of those games was on the road in Detroit. So it's like, this is a team that is also getting guys back. Like they're doing this without Jair Alexander on the defensive side of the ball. So I think the emergence of some of these playmakers in offense is real. And I think Jordan Love's emergence is real as well. So now are they, am I actually scared of them? Are they actually like Super Bowl contenders? No, I think that's how good the top 3 teams are I see in the NFC right now. That's just like, it's going to be one of those 3. But they're definitely a team that, if I am the Detroit Lions, I wouldn't want to face come playoff time.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the NFL draft. And we talk a little draft here in the last couple minutes of today's episode. Appreciate you, by the way, jumping on Mike Renner in place of Mr. Matt Williamson, who's got a short Steelers week. He's got a lies. I was doing all kinds of stuff today, TV and radio in the Pittsburgh area. So pretty awesome that we can go to the bullpen and find someone like Mike Renner on the roster at the Locked On Podcast Network at Mike Renner _ on Twitter. So when it comes to the 2024 NFL draft, is the decision so easy for the Bears that if the Panthers earn them that number 1 pick, then Justin Fields is bye-bye and you're drafting Caleb Williams? Or do you think the Drake May, Caleb Williams conversation is closer? Do you think the Justin Fields conversation is closer? I'm super interested in the very top of this NFL draft. And how many years can we have generational prospects at positions like quarterback and wide receiver, Mike?
Hopefully we continue to have those, right? Like it's good for business to get new talent at the quarterback position in the NFL. But I'll say this, if they can get the haul they got last year, like last year I was saying they should have drafted a quarterback. Justin Fields hasn't shown enough. And I think, in retrospect, they would have liked to have had CJ Stroud if all things considered. But the haul they got was so utterly absurd, so unlike any haul. And they still could have gotten Jalen Carter if they would have just wanted to draft Jalen Carter. They still could have gotten a blue chip guy, traded all the way back and got all these picks in return. If you can get something like that again, it's not crazy because you're still an awful roster. This is a roster that's so far away that even if you did drop a CJ Stroud in there, I don't think he'd be looking like what the Texans look like now. So there's a lot of stuff to do. But at the same time, I think it's pretty clear that Justin Fields is never going to be a high-level passer. You're banking on whatever offensive improvement, whatever getting him to, is that you can surround him with a great offensive line and be dynamic enough in the ground game that you give him layups in the passing game. But I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that you can go toe-to-toe with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL just as a pure passer. We've seen enough at this point, I think. So at that point, I would draft quarterback. But again, I think the desperation will be there from others that they could be working with an unbelievable draft haul for that number 1 overall pick to really set this franchise up for long-term success, regardless of who's at quarterback. So it's going to be a tough conversation, but we'll have that conversation for the next 5 months. And it's going to be fun.
Is Drake May close to being the number 1 quarterback, or is it all about Caleb Williams still for you at 1?
I put some dough on Drake May being the number 1 pick before the season because I think they're that close that it's not a full on. It wasn't going to be a complete, Caleb Williams show. And I think this season played out in a manner that really kind of exposed some of the reasons I'd be concerned about drafting Caleb Williams. Number 1. Now, am I super concerned? No, they're 2 of the best, probably the best 2 duo of prospects I've seen at the top of the draft since I started been doing this like full time in 2015. So I don't think you can go wrong with either, honestly.
It's funny because when it comes to, coach hirings and firings, you have a defensive guy, you fire him, you hire an offensive guy. If you're the Bears and you're seeing a quarterback that struggles to get the ball out quick and timing in the pocket and is more about making second reaction plays, would you be like a little bit apprehensive of drafting a guy that, while a better prospect, wins in a similar way in college and plays a little hero ball? And so that's an interesting factor as well. And obviously it shouldn't be a factor, but it has to creep in as human nature.
Oh yeah, because you're going to hear it from the fan base, right? If he looks like Justin Fields, who has similar strengths and weaknesses, I think again Caleb's a much better prospect. But if they look similar, you're definitely going to hear it from the fan base. But I do think you're in a position now where, with your GM and head coach, with the draft capital they have, you'll attract someone that wants to work with one of these guys, right? You'll attract a head coach that's one of the best coaching candidates out there, and who will have kind of a vision for whoever it is at the top of the draft, if you do have end of the season with that number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I think it's the way it's got to go. You either change coach, quarterback, or you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and a tackle with those 2 picks, maybe trade back, whatever it is, and build around that current group and then fire them if that doesn't work. But they still need a lot more talent in Chicago to get that thing going either way. I know recently, Mike, as we get you out of here, you ranked out the top positions, the strength of positions in the NFL draft. And so was it the quarterback group? What is the most top heavy position in the strongest position in this 2024 class?
Quarterback group's great, not only because you have the top 2, but there's going to be like 5 or 6 guys who could be top 50 to 75 picks, which is just rare. I don't know if we see anyone else go like top 5, top 10, but just the sheer depth is unique for this class. And then wide receiver is a big bounce back wide receiver class with like size, true NFL translatable guys. Like last year, we were talking ourselves into a bunch of 170 pounders trying to call them first rounders. And some of them have been playing really well. It's not like a knock on them by any means, but this year, a lot of NFL projectable dudes, real easy projections that I think we'll see them go pretty highly because of that.
And the tackle class is looking good as well. This does look like a really strong draft class in 2024. Mike, let the listeners know what you got coming up on Renner Ranks.
Yeah, going through a mock draft today and tomorrow on Renner Ranks. And so really trying to focus my attention here more on the draft going forward because, well, for the vast majority of teams, or for a good portion of teams, that's what we should be looking forward to here.
Draft season, baby.
Yeah.
All right. That is Mike Renner at Mike Renner _ on Twitter. You got to subscribe up and listen every day to Renner Ranks. And for half the teams in the NFL, it's been draft season for a little while. And of course, always a pleasure to chat with you, Mike. Appreciate you jumping on with me today. Thanks to everybody out there for being an everydayer. Make sure you subscribe to both Renner Ranks and Peacock and Williamson on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow, mailbag style, right here, Peacock and Williamson.